Hi, my name's Elaine, and I want to talk to you about one of the most powerful things that I have come in contact with in my life. It's called the Serenity Prayer. The Serenity Prayer is one sentence long, and if you really break it into pieces and you understand each part of it, it's packed with really great information. Some of those things that maybe you've heard many times. All can be that are life affirming and that are supposed to give you agency and power in your life, can find it in the Serenity Prayer. So I want to break it down. I want to look at each part of it. I'm going to try to do this quickly and so that it's a useful video for you. If you like it at the end, if you give me a thumbs up, that'd be great, because this is my first time doing this. And if you have any comments, as long as you keep it nice and considerate, then I'm going to be happy to respond. So anyway, let's just begin. Let me read to you the Serenity Prayer. And I would absolutely suggest that you open a browser and you type in Serenity Prayer so that you have a copy of it for yourself, because, well, I'm limited here in what I can do. And technology-wise, I really don't know how to put like text up on the screen and all these things yet. So bear with me. All right, I'm reading it to you. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I came in contact with this first when I was involved with a group that is a 12-step group called Adult Children of Alcoholics. It's an offspring group, sort of, a little branch off of Alcoholics Anonymous and all the other anonymouses, that groups that people join. 12-step groups are really great because you can go to the groups and just get stuff off your chest, but you can actually follow a program that's really very empowering. It takes a little bit of time, and I think that's if you really want to deeply change some patterns in your life. But I think a really good way to encapsulate a lot of what you're going to get out of this program, and especially since now with the virus, it's harder and harder to find a group setting wherein you get to sit across the table from people and have a conversation and read. But you can do some things on your own. You can do some things online that are also empowering. I think face-to-face is better, but for now, this is where we are. So it's a great group. You might want to join a different kind of group, like Eckhart Tolle's group, and for the Power of Now, which is a powerful program as well. Course in Miracles, Law of Attraction. So absolutely, whatever is your path, then that's the one that you should take, not the one that I say necessarily. But I did come from a dysfunctional home, and I did have an alcoholic parent, and I had another parent who had mental illness, and it was disruptive enough in my life that the patterns that I established were not working for me. So on the outward view would be that I was functioning fine. I had, I went on, I graduated from high school, I finished college, I got married, I had kids, but I had trouble throughout my life with interpersonal relationships, and I had emotional difficulties, even though they were not so severe that they required hospitalization, but they were just things that just kept on taking my power away from me. And I got to a point where I just couldn't keep on seeing, I would be sabotaging myself emotionally. So without blaming anybody else, I came to the conclusion that I needed something. So the first thing you do when you go to a group is you could probably read the Serenity Prayer. I guess all groups maybe don't read it, but gosh, I think it's pretty good stuff. So God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, I'm going to start out and talk about a stumbling block here, and that is the word God. So I am not going to come to you from a religious standpoint with this, because I understand that recovery is good for everybody, whatever faith you are. And if it's a no faith, that's fine too. It's for everybody. And so don't let the fact that it's a prayer or that it starts with God be a stumbling block to you. You can look at it as a higher power. It is a prayer, and prayer is supplication, and supplication is asking. But we also can think in terms of other forces in our world and ask for help. For some, that's still bordering on a kind of a religious thing, and they're too scientific to accept that. But okay, think of your own consciousness. And your own consciousness within you is a higher self, a self that knows what it needs, a self that's loving and patient, a self that is strong and resilient. That can be your higher power. And in order to think of it, is the best way is to imagine that is always your potential. That's always in there. So you can always appeal to that. Whether you're in that place in your life, you can appeal to that higher self. And so that's my higher power at times when I maybe don't feel like somebody in the universe is listening to me. Okay? So you get past that. Don't let that be a stumbling block. Just get past that, push through it. All right, so what you're asking for is serenity. Serenity, I think it's a great word because you can think of it in spiritual terms, but you can also think of it in almost scientifically. So you can think of it as peace, as vibration, the best vibration, as a best place to be, carving out a little quiet time for yourself and the ability to think. And in a scientific level, it's the ability to think rationally. It's the ability to be objective. And it's hard to be objective about yourself because we're subjective, but objective as if I could look at myself in a chair sitting opposite of me. If I can visualize, if I have an imagination, I can see a troubled person sitting in that chair, triggered by her emotions, and I can pretend I'm somebody else looking at that person. It's sort of like splitting in two, but you can do it with practice. And imagine yourself, and you're looking at yourself from across the way. And getting in touch with that more emotional, objective side of yourself, but looking at that emotional being. All right, that's a good place to be. That's serenity, because then you can kind of analyze why it is you're being triggered and how, to deal with it right there in the present time. So that's the first part, is appealing to whatever or whoever, or even to your higher self for serenity, a place in which you can carve out a little tiny bit of peace and a little bit of rational thought. And that is brilliant if you can do that. And it takes time. Forgive yourself if you don't find this immediately easy to access. All right, so the first thing it says, and there's two kind of like action phrases in this. This is this is the meat of it. The two ends are really like how you approach this prayer, but in the middle is like what you're really trying to get. And it starts out with the serenity to accept the things you cannot change. I have seen on bulletin boards, and I have seen in on memes this: I refuse to accept the things I cannot change, or I refuse to accept that I can't change things or something like that. Like I could change everything. But if you really want to be effective with this, you cannot come from the standpoint that you can change everything, because you can't change the past. For instance, the past is sitting there. It doesn't even exist really, but in our minds it exists, and we kind of see it still there, however we visualize it, and it's in our memory, but we can't change it. We can change how we think about it, but we can't go back in a time machine and change it. We can't change the very natural processes on the earth, like the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. We can't change, gravity. It just is going to happen, at least on our planet. So that is a irrefutable thing. Gravity and rotation in the solar system. And the past. We can't bring people back to life. People that are not in our lives anymore because they passed away, we can't bring them back. And there's a certain amount of letting go. It's very difficult. Sometimes we're in denial about that. It could be part of the reason that we end up looking for a recovery program is our grief over our loss of somebody. But we can't change that, but we can learn to accept that, okay? And learn to accept that we can't change it. So the second part, now I kind of don't want to go to the second part too quickly. I wanted to talk about people, because it seems like what we do is that we want to change people. And I have been an activist, and I am a very opinionated person, and I have attempted to convince people of things and change people's minds. Even this video is an attempt to do that, right? I mean, it's an attempt to say you should get into some kind of therapy or recovery program. But I also, at the same time, recognize that people don't change. Not for me. In fact, I don't want people to change for me. I want people to change for themselves. And I don't have any control over that, whether they decide to change. I could be very convincing. Maybe I could be very, very convincing. But most of the time, people, either they have their minds made up, or they're just not ready. They're just not in that place. You can't force them. If you force people, they might change, but under duress. And that's not really change. That's not agency. That's not changing because you want to change. So better, if you want control over your own life, is not to worry about the other people that you can't change and you can't control. So having that power to change your life actually means letting go of what you can't change. It's very important, because otherwise you will not succeed in the second part. Blaming people, you can do it and it might make you feel better, and you might be venting, and there's even, the ability to pursue in a court of law, or, redressing your grievances, petitioning to redress your grievances, which is a constitutional concept. That's all available to you. But it's still, that's an action you can take, actually something you can control. But the outcome isn't always going to be under your control. All right, so the next part, and this is it's so exciting, because once you let go of what you can't change, wow, there's so much you can change, and you get to change things and feel good about it. Okay, so the courage to change the things I can. Now, I'm going to go back over 3 words that we might be having trouble with. God, again, please push on through if that's a problem for you. And, if you have to put tape over the word, or delete it when if you write it down or something, fine. That's okay. Everybody should accept their own way that they have to make that appeal. Serenity, which many people don't understand because their lives are emotional and they're rarely in that state. But serenity, however, even in the few seconds that you can manage it, or release rationality or objectivity, seeing yourself in a chair opposite of you, and looking at yourself as if you're another person. That's a good way to do it. This last one, courage. Courage is hard to call up if you are scared, if you're fearful. Again, what brings you to a program like adult children of alcoholics is partially fear. That's okay. It's a driver. If fear is driving you to change something in your life, okay, but hopefully you just get to that point. But you have to do the opposite. You have to find courage. You have to flip it around. So courage maybe isn't something that maybe you associate with yourself because you have felt like weak or triggered or emotional for a long time. But what we can change, and where we find courage to change it, is possibly like in little baby steps. We might make a list of things that we want to change. Don't start with the great big things. Don't start with the things that scare you the most. Start with things that are like fairly easy to do. Like break stuff into smaller pieces. And you might find that you really can call forth the courage. I mean, you have it within yourself, believe it or not, just like you have the serenity. You also have the courage. And do what you can to make the changes that you want to make in your life, little by little. And just even saying the serenity prayer, just even like maybe copying and pasting it onto a document, printing it out and putting it somewhere, it's empowering. All right, it is, because it gets you to think. And especially if you break it down the way we are right now, it seems a little bit easier. It's not all at once. So once you can change the things that you need to change in your life, and you understand the difference, that's the last part. Even though I think it's all mixed up in here. It's trial and error to figure out what the wisdom is. Let me see if I can find that word for you. Okay, maybe you can see it there. You need the wisdom to know the difference between what you can change and what you cannot change. So if you can find that in yourself, that wisdom, that again requires the serenity, that requires the objectivity or the rationale or the peace to say, I can't change this. So let me, and I can change this. So let me give you an example, something that almost everybody understands. That is like if you drive a car. But I guess even if you just ride a bike or you walk as a pedestrian, it'll still work. So you're driving, and there's some idiot, right? He's behind you, he's tailgating you, or there's somebody in front of you that's going painfully slow, somebody at your sides, left or right, that trying to pass you or is too close or isn't paying attention, distracted driving. And you have a little bit of control, but you have to kind of understand that on the road, you have to let go a little bit. You don't have control over those other drivers. Just like you can't change people. You can't necessarily change the mindset and the thinking and the stupidity of other people on the road with you. And they're going to trigger you. So this is just like the microcosm of your whole life, is understanding, how will I react to that behavior? To the best you can do is maybe in some cases, you get to another lane, or you slow down, you don't move up on that person, goes too slow, or you get in another lane carefully and you go around. But aside from that, there's some things that you can't control. So what can you control? Should you roll down the window and flip the bird, or should you maybe not do that, because who's in that car? Is it a psycho killer or something? Maybe you don't want to do that. So that's where that serenity comes in, that you sit back and say, what can I change? I can change my outlook on that. I can say that I can't do anything about that driver. I can get over that emotion like more quickly. I can say that person might be having a bad day. or that person at some point is going to learn their lesson, or you might even put out a blessing for that person. Maybe they'll like learn how to be kinder in their own time, but still recognizing that you can't change another person or that other driver. And the Serenity prayer kind of can help you in those little situations and also in the bigger ones, like you're in a relationship with somebody who is abusive and difficult, and it might be hard to get out of that relationship because you're very much attached and codependent and all those things that keep us in bad relationships. But maybe you've come to the conclusion that you can't change that person, and the only person that you can change is you. Still might be difficult because you still have feelings, but try to look at that person as if that were another person in the relationship with that boyfriend or husband or wife, girlfriend that you have. You might say, wow, look at that person staying in that relationship, but you're actually talking about yourself, and you begin to see yourself as this emotionally triggered person. And you realize that this person that you're having problems with does not want to change. In fact, maybe that behavior is working for him or her. That dysfunctional behavior on some level works for him, but not for you. So the plan, to get out from that relationship might take a lot of steps. What are the things that you need to do that you can change? Well, can't change him or her. Can you change yourself? Yes. Do you need to engage with that person when they're difficult? Or should you hold back? Should you go someplace else for a while and feel safe? Should you start making a plan to get out of that relationship? But understand what you can change and what you can't change. And step back from that emotional person that you are for just a few minutes. Now, emotions are okay. In fact, that's why we have them. They tell us that we have to work on something or deal with something. When we feel emotion, it's basically our mammalian brain, but it's trying to tell us, wow, you feel really bad, so you need to cry, or you need to vent or write in your journal, or you're really angry. Well, you need to take some deep breaths and you need to stop and you need to rest. But the emotions are actually trying to get through. But we can sometimes just let our emotions run us, and sometimes it isn't necessary to be triggered as much as we are. Emotions are not bad to have, but they're just destructive to us if we let them continue to sabotage our life. So part of the wisdom is understanding how our emotions are us. Some of them are healthy, but also some of them are destructive and they're not working for us. And so some things we want to change. Could be the things causing that emotion or just the way we react. So anyway, I'd like to do other videos about the Adult Children of Alcoholics program, but I have to, of course, say that I'm not representing that program. This is more of my personal take on it. I would like to talk about the 12 steps, which are transformative. They're wonderful. But I think even if you decide not to pursue a 12-step program and you have some other plan, or you just don't even want to do any plan, but you might find a little bit of help daily, a little bit of mindfulness in the Serenity prayer. I'm going to read it to you one more time. And then again, if you've been helped at all by this, thumbs up. Give me a like, okay, if you want to. And check back and see if I have posted any more videos, and we can have a virtual 12-step meeting in the future one. So one more time. Serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. God bless you, and I hope that you will have the best life that you possibly can and make the correct choices that lead to a satisfactory future. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.